Welcome to the broadcast, my dear old fruits. Thank you for joining me. It's lovely to see you, and it was so splendid to see the Queen continuing her annual tradition of inviting children to trim the tree at Clarence House. So cosy, so merry, and channeling the spirit of royal Christmas, the Queen looked resplendent in forest green. There were musical performances, there was a special visit from Father Christmas and his reindeer. Gorgeous, gorgeous reindeer, isn't it? Like Santa Claus the movie. And the Queen received a Christmas card from little Dottie, her little friend Dottie, and a wonderful smackaroo. How charming. The Queen is patron of Helen and Douglas House, who support this enterprise. Helen and Douglas House were the world's first children's hospice, and this is the 18th time that families supported by the charity, along with hospice staff, have been invited to trim the tree. And the other charity involved is the Roald Dahl Marvellous Children's Charity, who provides specialist nurses and support for seriously ill children. There are over 120 Roald Dahl nurses supporting 33,000 seriously ill children, and it is important to be reminded of those in need or those who deserve special attention at this time of year, isn't it, my dear? And I'm very thankful for the royal family for doing that. And lots of members of the royal family have been out and about this week, as you will see, spreading cheer and goodwill and reminding us that Christmas ain't just about the presents and getting drunk and a bit of disco dancing, although of course there's nothing wrong with all of that, my dear, or a shag in the bushes, but it is also about goodwill to our fellow men and about Christ. And I, for one, am very thankful and very grateful that the royal family remind us of that, and they do it so well and so gorgeously in a way that is pretty much unrivaled. The children adored spending time with the Queen, who is fast becoming grandma of the nation, and she served food to her esteemed guests, also reminding us that she is there to serve us. And there was another tradition. This time it was one undertaken by the Queen's equerry, Major Ollie Plunkett, and you can see him placing a decoration on the tree with his sword. Ladies, can you just imagine Major Plunkett brandishing his long sword and giving your fir tree a poke for Christmas, my dear? I'm sure you can. Watch it and shut that door. And speaking about poking the fir tree at Christmas, did you hear about Annie Robinson? Hostess of The Weakest Link. You are the weakest link. Goodbye. Well, we all know who the weakest link is, don't we, my dear? The Duke and Duchess of Sussex. More about them later. But the gossip is that Annie Robinson has been enjoying a winter romance. She's in the winter season, 79. Andrew Parker Bowles, the Queen's ex-husband, is 83, and that is a wonderful time. Winter can be such fun and so cosy, especially when you have a 17th century barn, as Annie Robinson has, to host dinner parties and invite Andrew Parker Bowles around to sit in front of that 17th century fireplace and warm themselves like naked cherubs under the flame. Yes, this is what the gossip is, according to The Sun. Now, I had heard some gossip to this effect, but what I had been told is that it had not progressed into anything of the carnal adult nature, should we put it that way? I had heard that it was more of a fruity companionship, if you will. Affectionate sparring partners, that sort of friction, rather than anything physical. But The Sun tells us that the relationship has progressed and that Camilla is on board with it. She loves all of it. And good for them, I say. Good for them. Annie. Who's in your fanny? Well, now we know. Now we know who's in your fanny, my dear, and it's Andrew Parker Bowles, if rumours are to be believed. And as you will know, my dear, Andrew Parker Bowles, devastatingly sexy, the inspiration for J.D. Cooper's Rupert Campbell Black in Rivals and Riders and all of those raunchy novels. Well, he was a bounder of great note, and he can still be a bounder in his winter season. Why not, my dear? He can bound all over town. Bound away, says Annie. So I just hope that whatever they're doing, they're having fun. So we go from Santa Claus to the claws of Santa Barbara. in the form and shape of the Duchess of Sussex. And here she is, sloping along. She was spotted in black jumper and leggings, like a cat burglar. And also it was noticed that she was wearing her Bentley and Skinner diamond bracelet, as gifted by Charles on the eve of her wedding. How kindly she repaid him for that, for those 92 diamonds that make up that bracelet, and for the arm that Pa loaned her as she walked down half an aisle. How kindly she repaid him. What a brass neck. What a brass neck that girl's got. What brass? Vulgar. Vulgar. How tacky of her to wear it so brazenly, as if her shit smells of violets. How tacky. H, oh H, your father. I can't believe your Pa. He has shackled me in diamonds. The wedding gift was a shackle. Diamond shackles. He means to enslave me. Your white supremacist monarchy. He is racist. Oh, okay, if you insist. Unconscious bias. Whatever it is. The night before our wedding, Hads, when I am to be betrothed to you, my beloved, he shackles me in diamonds, the representative of this white monarchy, this white supremacist monarchy. He shackles me in diamonds. Of course I can't return them, it would be rude. And there's a pawn shop round the corner. But this is toxic masculinity, Has. Toxic masculinity. That doesn't mean that you can't buy me diamonds. You are my husband, you are my betrothed. And if that is how you wish to express your love, I will allow you to do so. But this, he enslaved me. He enslaved me. Vulgar. Vulgar and brazen. And as for Mr. Scobie and his end game, if reports are accurate, end game sold. It sold a few copies, but rather underwhelmingly. Quite underwhelmingly. There were 6,500 copies sold in Britain in the first 5 days of sale. Spare sold over 3 million copies in its first week. And Revenge by Tom Bower sold 31,000 in its first month, making about 7,500 a week. So that actually isn't a dissimilar number. Revenge sold in similar numbers for the first week. But Scobie's book seems to be slipping out the chart very quickly. Now, on the Amazon chart I looked at, it said that it made number 8 for most read and number 9 for most sold at the positions that I looked at, new entries as they were. So I don't think that it would be fair to call it a flop as such. I think that would show my bias if I were to say, well, it's an outright flop, because it has sold something. But the most fair comparison I can make is to compare with Mr. Scobie's own last release. And whereas this book sold 6,500 copies in 5 days, Finding Freedom apparently sold 31,000. 31,000, that was just a few short years ago. So that is an 80% drop in sales. Cold comfort for Mr. Scobie and for Sussex admirers. Cold comfort, but warm Christmas toddy for royal stalwarts such as us, my fruit crumbles. Warm Christmas toddy for us. So cheers, my dears. Before we go on, I must make an apology because I made a little boob in the previous broadcast. The vast majority of you wouldn't have noticed, but some of you would have, and one of you mentioned it, at least one of you, Ian MacDonald, and you were absolutely right to correct me, my dear. You did it very politely as well, but you were the only one that I noticing my mistake. It was when I was discussing Prince Harry's dukedom and the titles. I referred to it as a life peerage. It was only for 10 seconds or so. It was just 10 seconds of footage, but I referred to it as a life peerage. It is a hereditary title. It is a hereditary one. You know that, I know that. How many times have we discussed it? It's one of those. Naughty River. It was a careless, stupid moment. And as I'm always at pains to tell you, I'm not an expert, a historian, any of that, my dear. I'm just here to have a chinwag and a gossip with you. But I do try to deliver things accurately to you. And when you have lots of people watching, I take it quite seriously. And so I know that you won't mind, possibly wouldn't even have noticed, but it annoys me. So I do apologise for that mistake, because it was a significant one to make about the type of peerage that Harry holds. So the thing is, I'm mentioning this another reason to give you an insight into what goes on behind the scenes, mainly for my regular basketeers who might find it interesting. I suppose I'm offering it by way of an excuse as well for letting that one slip. That particular broadcast was such a nightmare. This is the last broadcast. I had such a headache getting it done and getting it finished. I probably have about 4.5 hours of footage of recording that and doing take after take. Yes. And you can skip ahead if you find this behind the scenes sort of chat boring, or go, whatever. But I know some of you will find it interesting to know how it goes, because I've been doing this channel for, over 2.5 years now. And I can only remember once before, maybe twice, but I remember once having to reshoot a video that I wasn't happy with. There might have been a handful of times. But usually I'm quite good at just improvising to my iPhone camera, as I'm doing now, for a time, and then snipping out what I don't want and publishing it to you. It's rather simple and comes out rather natural. I just have a handful of notes and go through it, my dear. But this particular broadcast, well, I'd had a terrible day. I won't go into details, but I had a lot on my mind that I was and still am in some ways dealing with. So I was very distracted. It was late. It was after 11 o'clock at night. And I thought, well, I want to get it done and out the way, because I probably won't have time the next day either. So I'll just record it now, finish it off in the morning and post it. So I recorded it, and then I went to watch the reels, the rushes on the computer. And welcome to the broadcast, my dear old fruits. And it is the first broadcast of the month. Do you know what it was, my dear, that stopped me posting the first version? It was the fact that I was wearing a brooch on my beige crushed velvet top. I was wearing a brooch and it was too heavy. And I've done this before and I know that it doesn't look good. But when I was standing up, it looked absolutely fine. But I sat down and it was slouching and it was too heavy. And welcome to the broadcast, my dear old fruits. Please remember to subscribe to the channel. It keeps sort of bunching up here and bunching up there, and I kept stopping. Well, I'm afraid, my dear, you're just going to have to put up with it, with the look, I'm afraid, as I go through the broadcast, or I'll be stopping and starting and getting my knickers in a twist throughout the whole thing. So I'll try to keep still and stop twitching, and if it bunches up, so be it, my dear. Oh dear. I knew that I would get lots of comments about it and people offering me tips of how to affix heavy brooches and what to wear, and I just didn't like the look of it. That is the kind of thing that will make me completely wipe and start all over again, because it was too high up and too close to sort of edit out, if you know what I mean, or crop off. It was just there and it was looking at me. I cannot bear it. It made my teeth itch, my dear. Oh, for fuck's sake. You were all right a minute ago. What the fuck? Did he share those names with anyone at any time? Who were those people he shared the names with? Did he write them down on any draft manuscript? How could the error have happened in that? Do you know what? They don't probe. See you next time, my dears. Ta-ra and toodle pip. So I decided I'm going to refilm it. It was the only way. Which is quite rare for me, but I decided to refilm it. So it was after midnight, it was about half midnight. I sat down to do it again, and I did it for an hour. But by this time, my voice was going after that busy day. It was getting hoarse. It was like the breath was tripping over itself in my throat. And once you start doing retakes, you can't remember all the time exactly what you've said, what you've already discussed. My notes are all over the place. and it was quite discombobulating. I think that's the right word for it, my dear. It was discombobulating, and I still wasn't happy with the look, to be quite honest with you. I usually rather like a makeshift feel, as you might have noticed. I don't like technical proficiency. I'm not even capable of high technical proficiency, my dears, but I like things to be a bit amateur and a bit makeshift. I think it has more charm, so I don't care about that. I don't care about making the odd mistake, but things like a droopy brooch, no, not having it. Welcome to the broadcast, my dear old fruits. It's the first broadcast of the month. It's very kind of you to engage with the channel, to leave your thoughts and your comments. It means the world. Oh, for fuck's sake. Welcome to the broadcast, my dear old fruits. It's the first broadcast of December. Hugh Grosvenor controls. Hugh Grosvenor controls the Grosvenor estate, which Hugh
Grosvenor controls the Grosvenor estate, which includes Hugh Grosvenor controls the Grosvenor estate, which includes large swathes of London. Hugh Grosvenor controls the Grosvenor estate. Hugh Grosvenor controls the Grosvenor estate, which Hugh Grosvenor controls the Grosvenor Hugh Grosvenor controls the Grosvenor estate. Hugh Grosvenor controls the Grosvenor estate.
Hugh Grosvenor controls the Grosvenor estate, which includes large swathes of London. So he owns Mayfair and Belgravia. Hugh Grosvenor controls the Grosvenor estate, which includes large swathes of London. Hugh Grosvenor controls the Grosvenor estate, which includes areas of London such as Mayfair and Belgravia.
And who do you think followed in those footsteps a few short years later? Harry. For fuck's sake, this is so painful. So after those hours of filming, the next morning I decided I'm going to do it again. I'm going to try and squeeze it in my day and do it all over again. And that is exactly what I did. And I was happier with the look. There was no brooch. But, oh, that was it. In the second recording, I didn't like just the simplicity of the beige crushed velvet and a different headband that I had. So I put on a veil and added the green jewels, which gave it another look. And I progressed for another take and was recording for another hour and a half or whatever it was. I can't remember now. Welcome to the broadcast, my dear old fruits. It's the first broadcast of the month. Oh, for fuck's sake. Thanks for joining me, my darlings. I appreciate your company and I'll see you next time. Take care, my dears. Toodle pip. Oh, for fuck's sake. And there's a happy ending to this, by the way. But so that might have been the reason. I'm quite sure that boob went under my radar before I put it out, because I couldn't be bothered to watch it over and check it before I pressed publish, my dear. I was sick of it, I was grumpy, I was exhausted, and I was thinking to myself, no one's going to be interested in this broadcast anyway. I thought I'd been going for 4-5 hours of just filming alone on this broadcast. No one's going to watch it anyway. It's going to be boring. They're going to sense that I am discombobulated, and I can't even think up an imaginative title for this broadcast, and I just thought, you know what? You win some, you lose some. I'm just going to put it out there with no thought of the thumbnail, the title, something's happened, press published. Well, just shows to expect the unexpected, my dear, because within 6 hours that video had 100,000 views. And for my little channel, my little corner of YouTube, you know, I get a healthy amount of views always, but I think that was probably the quickest of any video I've ever made to reach 100,000. And it also had an extremely high like to dislike ratio. So you seem to enjoy it as well very much. And all that to say that things aren't always what they seem, are they? Because as I was scrambling through all those takes and it was getting late at night and then I was up early in the morning thinking, what am I doing? Driving myself absolutely crazy. It's not going to be, you know, no one's even going to care about it. There it was, and it did very, very well. So all's well that ends well, boob and all. The Princess of Wales is a Wonder Woman. One moment she is doing daytime chic, and a few hours later she spins around and turns into Cinderella for nighttime appearances full of glamour and high-octane royalty. She does it so well, and she did it this week. First of all, she was greeted with cheers and rapturous applause as she opened the new Evelina Children's Day Surgery. And she wore McQueen in the colour denim blue, and she was wearing blue to the earlobes as well. Sapphire and diamond oval drops. Beautiful. She was reunited with one of her friends, fundraising amputee Tony. He's 9 years old now, and he was there together with his mother, his adoptive mother. Now, Tony, who you might remember, was making conversation with Catherine and William at the carol service a couple of years ago. Let's hope he'll be there this year too, because we've got the carol service coming up very soon. He might be there again, but it's a very touching story, you know, and quite difficult for me to tell you. But this very special character, you can see here, looking very handsome in his smart jacket, and you can see from the look on his eye and his expression, he's a special little fellow. It's difficult to tell you if you don't know, but he lost his legs because he was abused by both of his parents. And at the age of 41 days old, I think, he went to hospital. That's when he had to have his legs amputated because of his parents' abuse, his own birth parents. What can you say other than the fact that there are some sick people in this world, some sick degenerates of disturbed mind and wickedness, evil. And I'm sure, quite sure, that this young gentleman wouldn't want our pity or sympathy because he's thriving, he's surrounded by love, has a wonderful adoptive family, and actually his adoptive parents have been campaigning because his birth parents are serving 10 years in jail. I say throw away the key. I say lock him up and throw away the key. Solitary confinement for life. They're serving 10 years, probably get out in 5, but his adoptive parents campaigned successfully for longer sentences for anyone who seriously harms a child, which should go without saying anyway. And Tony himself has raised £1.6 million by walking 10 kilometres on his prosthetic legs in aid of the Evelina, which cared for him. Wonderful young man, going to go on to great things, especially now that he is a friend of a future king and queen. Who knows, we could be seeing a knighthood for fundraising in the future. Who knows, I wouldn't put it past this very special young chap. Now he is surrounded by love. As was Catherine, who received a lovely bunch of flowers there, and she spread gaiety and goodwill throughout the proceedings. And then, after a whirlwind of majesty in the form of a quick change, she appeared at the Diplomatic Reception, this glamorous event that is hosted annually at Buckingham Palace by their Majesties. This diplomatic reception celebrated London as home to one of the largest diplomatic corps in the world, and 500 members were hosted there. Catherine was wearing Jenny Packham. We've seen this pink sequin gown before when she was in Jordan for the royal wedding earlier this year, and she looked lovely, which goes without saying. Now, I don't care if their Majesties are short, tall or in between. It's not their more diminutive height that bothers me in comparison to William and Catherine, but for my personal taste, in an official photograph, it is the lack of harmony that the difference in heights creates. Do you understand? I wouldn't mind if they were dwarfs or giants at all, but it is the difference that doesn't strike me as very magisterial, and it doesn't illustrate the hierarchical structure either. So personally, and I know it's silly, but personally I would have preferred to see them arranged with using platforms or perhaps on a spiral staircase or something, so that their Majesties could be above the Prince and Princess of Wales. I think they're missing a trick there, but that's my strange old taste. There we go. Catherine was wearing the lover's knot and the Greville chandeliers to the ear. I tend to prefer the lover's knot worn with pearls, but it's nice to mix things up occasionally, isn't it? And what I did really enjoy were the Cinderella pumps, those Rania 105 embellished pumps on the toes by Jean Vito Rossi. And she clutched a satin Prada piece. It's one that she's owned for years and has enjoyed. Well worn, no doubt full of lip gloss, with a spare one for Sissy-in-law. The gentlemen were so handsome in their white tie, and Queen Camilla wore Fiona Clare, together with lots of jewels, wonderful jewels, including the girls of Great Britain and Ireland tiara, so beloved of the late Queen, and always a crowd pleaser. And she wore a diamond stomacher, and this caused quite a sensation for those of us who enjoy royalty, because they're very much out of fashion, or have been for a long time. The name of them isn't very appealing either, is it? Stomacher. It sounds rather harsh. Actually, there is another name for them, the devant de corsage, which sounds a little more dainty, but it is signifying superiority. I very much approve of this. wonderful, and they used to be a regular feature. They were featured heavily among royal women of the past. And good on Camilla, because the gentlemen have done away with wearing breeches to this kind of event, which is a bit of a shame for some of us who prefer the more traditional, but Camilla is flying the flag for antiquity, and I'm here for it. The Mapelli Mozzis hit town again, showcasing their glamour to all and sundry. They're a real Darby and Joan type, aren't they, my dear? Real Darby and Joan. In their royal blues, well, it was Beatrice, wasn't it? Beatrice! In various shades of blue, which I very much enjoyed, actually. I really did. They were at the premiere of James Blunt, One Brit Wonder, at the Picture House Central. Beatrice was wearing jigsaw all over, in velvet Ashby blazer, navy satin asymmetric skirt and Zara boots. Although she does, after she looked so wonderful last week, so gorgeous, I thought, sexy even, and posed so well for photographs at one of the gatherings I reported on. This time she was back to gurning away. She can't help it, she's got big eyes, she's got big teeth. That's how they come across sometimes. I get it, but I just wish she could arrange her features so that she didn't look so startling. She reminds me of an animated character in a permanent state of shock or surprise. You know those kinds, my dear? Or the scream, I don't know. It's just... Compose yourself, my dear. That's all I ask. That is all I ask. Compose yourself, lovey. And William was out in force this morning, surprising members of the public. This time he was surprising this lovely lady, Emma Webb. In 2020, Emma's daughter, Brodie, very sadly took her own life at the age of 16. And she was a great lover of horses. The royal family, of course, were a great lover of horses. And so Brodie's family. And so her mother has been putting on a charity fundraiser, walking from Brodie's favourite showground to the London International Horse Show, which is a journey of 158 miles, and today is day 13 out of 15. And there we have Big Willie coming up the rear and taking her by surprise. Isn't she a lucky woman? She looks absolutely overjoyed, as any of us would be, my dear, to be taken in such a way. And wow, I bet that made her day, perhaps even her life. But she seems like a lovely, spirited woman, and we wish her very well, and we remember Brodie with fondness. And Prince William was remembering his old chum Dave with fondness. Do you remember Dave Martin, who struck up a friend with William and was together with him last year, helping to vend copies of The Big Issue to support homelessness? Yes, you remember that, of course. Well, we have Big Willie, Big Issue again. And this time it was outside a local Tesco, and local shoppers were stunned to see them together, but it was a real tonic for us to see them together again, and William in his cap and tabard. And Mr. Martin also creates and sells his own art, which has been displayed on Brick Lane in their galleries. He is inspired by Matisse, in fact, and now he has his own flat in Tottenham, which is where Adele's from, by the way. And after sleeping rough for a few months in the past, he's managed to put his life back together with the help of the income that he earns from selling The Big Issue. The Queen made a very private and intimate visit to the Ashiana network, where she comforted a victim of domestic violence who had been brought to the UK through a forced marriage. And this refuge is one of the homes that are operated by the Ashiana network, and they operate several refuges supporting South Asian, Middle Eastern and Turkish women. It was a very low-key visit, no frills, no huge security or fanfare, and it's in a secret location because this involves traumatised women who are fleeing complex circumstances. And the Queen said, "I'm absolutely delighted to have been able to come here and see you. It's a case of seeing is believing, to see how far you've come in your journey to become fine, confident women is an inspiration." And while the Queen was busy doing that, the King was attending an Advent service and Christmas reception at the Coptic Orthodox Church Centre in Stevenage. And this is one of the most ancient churches in the world, founded in the 1st century in Egypt. And he met volunteers from the ministry and members of the congregation, including this 6-year-old girl, who presented him with a handwritten Christmas card. Isn't it jolly? And this was part of ongoing efforts to encourage interfaith dialogue and a greater understanding of different religions in Britain and abroad. Well, that's all very well and good, and I'm certainly one to encourage interfaith dialogue and greater understanding of religions, but I do think it would behoove His Majesty to have a greater understanding of the religions that might pose a threat to the security of this nation, because not every religion comes in peace, or not every part of every faction of every religion comes in peace, and in fact are rather hostile and have actually stated their hostility to the Christian faith and to these very shores. So it might behoove His Majesty to start becoming a bit more conscious about that while he embraces all of these religions. And by the way, I've been reading the comments of London's first black Lord Lieutenant, who is the King's representative in the capital, and a firm friend of the family's and a firm favourite, Sir Ken Elisa. He's been speaking on Mr. Scobie's claims, or I should rephrase that, on Meghan and Harry's claims about the conversation. He said this week, "The alleged exchange was private, and so none of the rest of us can possibly have a view. However, in my family and in those of my friends and acquaintances, discussing the features of an unborn relative is not just harmless, it is part of the joy of anticipation." This chap was named as the most influential black person in Britain in 2016. And he said he has never once encountered the slightest hint of racism in his many years working with the royals. And as you can see from the photographs that I'll flash up, he's very well acquainted with all of them, going back rather a long time. So I think he's got a little bit more insight than some of those naysayers that are trying to tar the royal family with a certain brush. Well, they can brush off, can't they, my dear? Brush up and brush off. And I'm going to rush off, and I look forward to seeing you next time, my dears. Thank you for your company, and see you soon. Ta-ra and toodle pip.